Hello, everyone, and welcome to Focus On with the Alexander Valley Film Society. I am your host, Catherine Hecht, and I am dialing in today from my home office here in Cloverdale, California. Welcome. Today, we are thrilled to welcome back to the studio Tony Bill, Hollywood legend. He won't let you say that, but we will say that. Tony's been in Hollywood for 57, 58 years now, and we can't thank him enough for coming back just to talk to us. Listen, we know it's been a heck of a couple of weeks around here. You may have heard there's a pandemic going on. Turns out there was also a fire disaster here in Northern California. And right now, many of us are shut in our homes due to smoke, but grateful to have homes to come home to. So a couple of housekeeping items. We are back after 2 weeks. The fire event had us have to cancel a couple of weeks of interviews there. Those have been rescheduled to Jan Wall, who's going to meet with us on September 13th. We're going to talk My Favorite Year, and we're going to use that to launch the festival, which is scheduled for Wednesday, September 23rd through Wednesday, September 27th. It's the 6th annual Alexander Valley Film Festival. We're going virtual. We're putting together a terrific lineup of events and films. Really encourage everybody to get involved. And passes will start to go on sale sometime in the next week. Everything's been delayed, obviously, because of the natural disasters around us. Happy to be healthy, happy to be at home, happy to be coming to you live this afternoon. And without further ado, let's bring in Tony Bill.
Oh, there I am.
Hi, Tony. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's fun to be back.
So happy. Woo, I just pressed a key. So happy to have you here. I said to you earlier, and I really meant it, you know, in this time, we're, at least in our community up here in Northern California, people are just exhausted and probably traumatized, probably a lot of PTSD going on. And to have you back, somebody we just enjoyed speaking with and just having an easy conversation just means a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
So we're going to dive right in. I kind of wish everybody could have been a fly on the wall for our conversation before the conversation, but let's go back because I got a lot of flack from my husband unit after we talked last time, because when we got to the part about you backing into acting into Hollywood in the 60s, and then there you are in your first feature film acting right alongside Frank Sinatra. And then I went on and we talked about other things, and my husband was in the other room saying, wait a second, why aren't you talking about him? So let's start there. Frank Sinatra, you walk onto set, and you told me earlier you weren't even sure he was there.
Well, yes. When you say I backed into acting, what I guess I don't know what that means exactly, but what happened was I came to Los Angeles right out of college to get a job acting in movies, because that's what my idea, my concept, or my image of acting in Los Angeles was. But I had no idea that I would end up starring in a movie. So I was not a film fan per se. I didn't spend my youth in movie theaters. I was thinking about this the other day. I really have only had two jobs in my lifetime. One was sailing. So I either worked on boats or sailed boats, or in a couple of cases worked as a professional sailing master, skipper, whatever, on sailboats. So my job for a while was sailing. The next job I had that was what people call a job really was the job I got acting in Come Blow Your Horn. So, you graduate in June or July. By the time I got home from college, it was the end of June. I needed a job. I had an introduction to a director in Hollywood who said, come on up if you ever want to talk about it. And so to make a short story even shorter, I came to Hollywood, stayed with my grandmother who lived in Hollywood, met a director, he sent me to an agent. The agent knew they were casting for Come Blow Your Horn because it was the big part for a young man of the year. And I read for them and talked to them, and I auditioned for them, and then I did a screen test, and I got the part. So by September, I was in the middle of the movie business. But I had not really gone to many movies that I can remember. My mother liked foreign films, French films especially, so I would go to some of those. But I was not a movie fan. So when I walked on the set of Come Blow Your Horn for the first time, I was kind of looking for Frank Sinatra, and there was a guy on the set who looked just like Frank Sinatra to me. But it wasn't. It was his stand-in, who was roughly the same size and physiognomy, standing side, and because he always also worked as his double. So he was close enough that I kind of thought, I wonder if I should go introduce myself. I couldn't figure it out at first. So yeah, that was my first day on the set.
And then can you tell us a little bit about your experience with Sinatra as a person and a human being?
Well, it was sort of an avuncular relationship. I was 22, and what was he, 45 or 50? So it wasn't even the brotherly spectrum of ages that the movie was about. But he was very nice to me, very considerate, being that it was my first time on a set. And especially as a very impatient person. He was notoriously and accurately speaking, very impatient. Come on, let's get on with it. One take was probably enough as far as he was concerned. If the director said, let's do another one, he'd say, "Now, Pally, I got it that time. That's it. Let's move on." And he had a lot of power as a star, so that was clear. But he never misused it around or with me that I can remember. If, in fact, the director, a lovely man named Bud York, and it was his first movie too, if he wanted to do another take after a couple, whether it was me or any other reason, he would go to Frank and say, "Hey, Frank, the kid needs another take. I need another take with the kid." So I would get used as the excuse for doing another take, and he never got tired of that. He said, "Okay, if he needs it, go for it," or whatever. So very kind to me, but as I say, I can't claim this kind of buddy relationship because we weren't buddies. He was old enough to be my father practically. And as all famous people are, he was isolated from the crew, the cast. He was always busy in between takes with interviews or personal business. I don't know. But anyway, but given that there was no ulterior reason for him to be solicitous of me, he was lovely. He was very nice.
We also we got to talk a little bit about fame in general and how, so you've got a lot of experience now seeing people find fame, probably not do so well with fame, or have all kinds of different experiences with it. But what have been some of your observations about how fame changes people?
Fame changes people because people change you. The rest of the world changes you. I consider fame to be the equivalent of, you ever heard of the expression, the Chinese water torture?
Oh God, yes.
You know what it is? The concept is you kind of tie somebody to a chair and you drip water on them until they can't stand it. It's a little drip at a time. It is not waterboarding, for example, which is an assault, but it is a little bit at a time. So little by little, when you become famous, and you really become famous today. You didn't become so famous 50 years ago because it took a lot of exposure to become recognized. I mean, if somebody didn't see you in your movie, for example, you wouldn't be recognized anywhere. Um, Even television was hardly as ubiquitous as it is now. So apart from the fan magazines, which were kind of,
Mhm.
I thought, a really embarrassing sidebar to being in a movie, um, it was hard to become really famous. Today, uh, a famous person can't go outside their house.
Mhm.
First of all, there's people waiting outside to take your picture and put in and cash in on your face. So there's people waiting outside your house. You mentioned Brad Pitt. Let's talk about Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, to my knowledge and my short exposure, is a really cool guy.
Mm.
Um, he was actually my choice to star in a movie that the studio didn't think he was capable of being a star. So, right, I wanted him to be in a movie that Helen, my wife, and I did called Untamed Heart, and
Mm.
he was our first choice. He flew out from New York. He met with the studio, and I wanted him, and he'd only done one or two movies, small parts, and they said, "Nah, we don't think so."
Yeah.
So let's use Brad Pitt as an example of a superstar, a big star.
Mhm.
And you can use sports figures interchangeably with singing. A lot of different people are famous for different things now, um, as compared to somebody who was once called famous for being well known. Uh,
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
so Brad Pitt can't go out of his house. He's got people sitting outside wherever he lives, and they know where he lives because of the world we live in. You can't live privately anymore.
Right.
So he can't go out of his house. He can't go on a vacation with his wife and kids. He can't take a commercial aircraft. He can, but he wouldn't, and he shouldn't probably. He can't do. He can't go. He can't go out and get a bottle of wine at the wine shop. Not easily, and sometimes not at all.
Mm.
Now he also, if he tells a joke, everybody around him laughs at it. If he has a strong opinion about something, nobody really disagrees with him. If he's talking like I am, nobody interrupts him to say, wait. It Now those are the little drops of the Chinese water torture that I'm talking about.
Mm.
So it's the equivalent of being in solitary. If you're there long enough, it is brainwashing, is what it is. And fame and the people who treat you as famous brainwash you. So when that goes on long enough, you become a different public and private person than you were when people told you were stupid. Or that's not funny. I don't think that's so funny. Or when they said, "No, you're full of crap. That's a stupid. That's really a dumb." All the things that the rest of us have adjusted from day one to live with are slowly whittled away so that everybody laughs at you. You go to a restaurant, you get into the restaurant whether you have a reservation or not, you get the best seat in the restaurant, and you get served immediately. That's nice. We all kind of wish our lives were that way, but it's not nice when it happens at every restaurant you go to every day of your life. You stop learning how to be an ordinary person. You stop becoming like everybody else. So that is my observation of fame. And it's, I would say, as irresistible as brainwashing is. You tie someone up in solitary and you torture them and you do this, that, and the other thing to them long enough, deprive them of this, give them too much of that. The normal human response is to become a product of that brainwashing. And that's what fame is.
I mean, did you that's actually some really good insight. But did you see that mechanism with Sinatra? or Redford.
Oh yeah. Well, they're all treated like that.
Yeah.
Now, do people abuse their fame? Often.
Sure.
They get pissed off at somebody they shouldn't have gotten mad at. They talk down to people. They mistreat people. They ignore people. They don't trust people. It's very easy not to trust people when, and again, you could use the word rich interchangeably with fame. When you are the person that everybody wants to borrow money from, or talk into something, or treat like you're a bank for their ideas or their projects. When you're that person, it is very easy and probably very necessary to treat everybody with suspicion, as if they want something from you, because in fact, almost everybody does want something from you, which is why you tend to see famous people traveling or or marrying or eating together, because at least they can probably trust the other famous person. They're birds of a feather. They're not going to be hit on for their friendship or their money or their fame or their company or the people they know or what they can do for you by other people who have the same degree of famous power.
And was that something that ever started to happen to you, or an experience that you recognized?
Well, I hope not. I don't think so. First of all, I was never famous in that respect. I've rarely gone anywhere from day one where somebody walked up to me and said, "Oh, you're Tony Bill. I'm the biggest fan of yours. I saw you." It's like, that's not the way. That's not the way it works. I never. I never worked that much, or in that kind of movie, or that kind of commercial venue, and pretty much with the exception of maybe 6 or 7 years where I was acting, I was not acting. I was producing or directing or trying to. So I wasn't in that many things. I wasn't in that major of things. More people recognize me from Come Blow Your Horn even today probably than anything else I've done, because it was such a big hit movie.
I have to share something really quickly. Let me see if I can pull it up. Can you see the picture there?
Yeah.
Look at his face. And his face. I love it. So good.
Yeah, that's a still from the movie.
Yeah,
where I was transformed into this hip swinging younger brother, supposedly.
So Tony, let's move forward just a little bit here. I was poking around your IMDb page, which, by the way, Tony says needs to be updated, so take it with a grain of salt. But I noticed that you were on you were thanked for Inside Deep Throat. Or Deep Throat. And so
Inside Deep Throat.
Inside Deep Throat. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about why you were thanked for that.
Well, that was a documentary that was made about the making, distribution, prosecution, fate of the movie Deep Throat, which was putatively the first mainstream porno movie, even though, looking back on it, I think if anybody did, it was kind of tame. But a young prosecutor, a young U.S. prosecutor in, I'm pretty sure it was Nashville, decided that the government should go after the movie industry and for its putatively pornographic leanings, and
this loose moral fiber.
Right. So this movie was the one to go after, but there's no law against making it, so they would go against it for distributing it. Well, there was no applicable law against that either, so they came up with a charge of transporting pornographic material across state lines. So this is the ACLU. This is on behalf of the whole country.
That's where the lawyer was from, right?
That's right. The lawyer decided, the lawyer prosecuting it was a U.S. attorney. That was the U.S. government was coming after them. And the head of the ACLU in Los Angeles called me and said, Tony, we need to have an expert witness, and we think you would be a great expert witness because you've made films, you're an actor, you're a director, you're a producer, you have a lot of experience, you have an Academy Award.
Right, you had won the Oscar, right.
And we need somebody to give an expert opinion as to how a movie works. How does it work? When an actor gets hired, does an actor sign a contract? Who's the contract? All these details. And so I said, of course. And he said, and we can't pay you anything. We can't pay your hotel. We can't pay your transportation because legally that would put us in the position of hiring you, and instead of just you stepping forward as a professional. I said, fine, no problem. So I show up, and there's a courtroom. Oh, and the person they were going after was the actor, Harry Reams, who was the male star of that movie. So they were going after Harry Reams as being an accessory to the crime of transporting pornographic material across state lines. Well, one of the first things they had to establish is how movies are made and how does an actor get a part, and does an actor have to do what the director is asking him to do? Does a director have to do does a producer have, a writer, an actor have to do what's in the script? Can they object to it? All these slippery questions about how to entrap, in effect, this actor for being in a movie. So I answered all those questions pretty well. and as most witnesses in most trials are instructed to be as don't offer your opinion. Just give the facts. Say yes, don't start getting into your opinion. Well, unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, I couldn't resist giving my opinion as to a couple things. One of which was the prosecuting attorney, the U.S. prosecuting attorney, said, well, Mr. Bill, because they had also proved it was pornographic. What's the definition of pornography? I forget the name of the famous Supreme Court judge who opined that I don't know what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. That was his response to.
Sounds pretty legal.
They asked me, well, Mr. Bill, what do you think is pornography? I said, I don't know. It depends on the circumstances. They said, well, would you consider? I can't remember. Would you consider something or other to be pornographic? I said, no, I don't think that would be pornographic. And he said, well, how about this? And I said, no, I don't think that would be pornographic. And then he said, how about sex with an animal? Would that be pornographic? And I said, well, one of the most famous paintings in history is the painting of Leda and the Swan. Leda being raped by a swan. Very famous classical painting. So I don't consider it pornographic. I can't imagine anybody else has, because it wouldn't be so famous. Which, as it turned out, took all the wind out of their sails. So that's why somebody thanked me for being a part of that documentary.
Just stop it right there. That's hysterical. So, okay. And then it's really funny. Okay, so inching forward, then we get to Going in Style.
Okay.
So let's talk Going in Style. Alan Arkin, George Burns, Lee Strasberg. Do you remember the origin? So did those guys get attached to it
The way that movie
early on, or?
the way that movie came about was the head of Warner Brothers said, "We have a script, and we know you like first-time writers and actors," which is true. All the movies I've made, virtually all of them, have been written by a first-time writer.
Wow.
And several directed by first-time directors.
That's so.
So we know that we love you around here at Warner Brothers. We know you well. Would you read this script, because we're having a lot of trouble getting the young first-time director to cut the script down to size and hire George Burns, because he doesn't want to hire George Burns, who had just played God, right, in big hit.
Wow.
And the movie is about three old guys. It's about three old guys. It's just, it's a serious comedy. So the first thing I did, Marty Brest, who was the young director just out of film school, and I had actually seen his student film, had refused to cut the script down. It was too long. So I said, "Marty, the script's too long." He says, "Not too long. You don't know how I'm going to direct it. You don't know how I work. You don't know how I'm going to." I said, "No, I don't." I said, "But we all think it's too long." I said, "I'm going to do this. This is customary in the film business. I'm going to have the script timed. Script supervisors, almost all of whom traditionally have been women, but now not so much. Script supervisors, one of their jobs is to time the script before they ever start shooting it. So they get out a stopwatch and they imagine the action, they imagine what's on the page. And because of their experience in making films, they're really good at coming in at a pretty accurate guess as to how long the cut film will be, not the final cut, but the director's cut. So he said, I don't care about what a script supervisor says. I don't care. I'm not even going to pay attention to, I said, okay, but I'm going to get the best script supervisor in the business that I know to time the script, and we'll just see what she says. We'll go from there. And so I did, but what I didn't tell him I was also doing was I got two script supervisors to time the script. They each came in at like 1 minute of each other and at 2.5 hours, much too long. So I got him to cut the script.
Was that your chicken?
Yes, my chicken. Yeah,
it wasn't you.
They're fighting with the four old ones. So then the other thing, he just refused to hire George Burns. He says, George Burns isn't an actor, he's an old comedian. He's I said, well, so I don't remember how, but I convinced him that George Burns would be great in the movie. And he was just wonderful. So that's how that movie came about. And it turned out it's a lovely, lovely movie. It's one of my favorites.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but I just have such fond memories of watching that with my dad.
Yeah, they remade it. Warner's went and remade it a few years ago, but it didn't have the magic that George Burns and Lee Strasberg and Art Carney. It wasn't Alan Arkin. Alan Arkin was in the remake.
Oh, sorry, Art Carney. That's what I meant.
Art Carney, George Burns, and Lee Strasberg. They were great. So one day, I'll tell you a story. One day I was on the set. And George Burns was sitting next to Lee Strasberg in the actor's chair on the set in the background. They're setting up a scene. Nobody around them. Nobody there. Except me lurking in the background just by accident. I just happened to be walking by. So George is sitting there and he's got Lee, and they're sitting there silently, like two quiet old guys. And George turns to Lee and he says, and George was like 85, 90 almost.
God.
George turns to Lee and he says, how old are you? Lee says, 78. Why? George says, go get me a glass of water. That's how funny George Burns was when nobody else was even in the room as far as he knew.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's great. That is so great. Oh boy. Okay, so we're going to talk about one more thing, and unless other things come up. You, interestingly enough, you were talking earlier about what to call something or how to refer to something. And can you tell us a little bit about the book you wrote?
Oh, okay. Well, years ago, my wife, who's a producer, and I were on the set of one of our movies, and somebody used a term that she hadn't heard before, and it started me thinking, as I did from day one, as I was on my first set on Come Horn, you walk on a set and people are talking about, get the gobo, put the gobo over there, and get me a baby and put it over on a leg, and was this a MOS? Yeah, this MOS. So all these terms that nobody outside the movie business would understand, and I started getting fascinated with. I wonder where these words came from. There are some expressions, like I just used MOS, which I'll tell you about in a minute. All these words that we use, we speak a different language on the set. It's rather like aviation. As a pilot, I say things that if you weren't a pilot, you wouldn't understand what I was talking about.
Right.
Or as a sailor, sailing has its own language too.
Right.
But movies have a very old background of that language. Some of them hark back to before movies were invented. So I started thinking, well, I'm going to look some of these things up that I know. And I had some trouble looking up the etymology, the history of various words. So I thought, well, maybe I'll write a book about this. So I did. I started writing a book. Every time I heard something or thought of something or remembered a term, I'd write it down and I would look it up somehow, or try to look it up, or ask somebody, or try to figure it out of where did this word come from. And as I just mentioned, there's a ubiquitous term in the movie business, MOS. Anybody who's in the movie business knows what MOS means, and they all kind of pride themselves. I say we all pride ourselves on knowing the kind of secret of what does MOS mean and where does it come from. And in general, it means mid-out sound. That's because many times we'll shoot a shot or maybe even a scene, and we won't record the sound. And we don't want the sound people to worry about it. We don't want the crew to worry. We don't want anybody to worry about the fact that we're not recording sound, and for various reasons. And the AD, the assistant director, says, "Okay, this one will be MOS, everybody, MOS." So, as I say, universally, everybody who ever asks about what does MOS mean, they will say, it means mit-out sound, German, right? And in varying interpretations or varying stories, they will say, oh, it comes from Otto von Sternberg or Otto Preminger or some famous German director who directed a Hollywood movie. And he said, okay, everybody, this time we've been doing this mit-out sound. So this is legend in our business, this word. So as I started getting deeper and deeper into this, I realized nobody had ever written this book about this lexicon. They'd never written a dictionary of movie terms. And I couldn't find out exactly which director said that and when was it and how to. So anyway, what I discovered, I think without fear of contradiction, and here's the book. I wrote this book. It's called Movie Speak. I'm not selling the book because I don't make any money from it. It's too cheap. But it's in its third or fourth printing, and it's ubiquitous in many film schools, because it has everything you need to know to walk on a set and sound like you know what you're talking about, which is
cool.
So what I discovered is that MOS does not mean mid-out sound, and it was not a quote of a German director. In the earliest days of film, 35 millimeter film, the picture was shot on 35 millimeter film, and the sound was recorded on a magnetic stripe of a different piece of material. And those two boxes of material were sent to the lab, and they were processed and developed. The film was developed as film is developed, through a bath process. And the sound stripe, it was a stripe on a piece of 35 millimeter film, was processed. And then later on, the two were merged as a composite piece of film, and the sound was on the side of the picture, and so on and so forth. But if you shot your scene without recording the sound, when you sent the material to the lab in the various boxes of film and sound material, you notated if it was silent on the sound reel box that it was missing the optical stripe, MOS.
Wow.
So MOS does not come from some distant German dictator saying, "All right, this time we do it without time." It simply means it was missing the optical stripe.
Wow, what a fun project.
So it was fun. It was fun to discover things. It was fun to remember things. And it was fun to go up to old timers on a movie set and say, like, where is, what does, I don't know. I don't want to quote, some of these shouldn't be quoted, but where does it come from,
Yeah.
On the cover, here's the word do-si-do. Okay, so this was a do-si-do. What does that mean? Well, of course, it comes from square dancing, where people reverse their directions and go around in a different direction, right? You ever been to a square dance?
Yeah, yeah.
Say, okay, everybody, we do-si and do-si-do. And without stopping the music, the couples turn and go in the other direction. Well, on a movie set, a do-si-do is moving the camera in the opposite direction.
Huh.
So our language is full. It's a book full of words that on their surface you would never figure out what they mean, as well as many words that everybody has heard. Gaffer, grip. Where does grip come from? I could go on all day, but grip does not come from where you think it comes from.
Tony, so good. It's so good to chat with you. I have one more question for you. Over your left shoulder, is that a picture of the Beatles on the wall behind you?
Yes, it is. It's an autograph picture of the Beatles, which they didn't autograph. I acted in a couple of shows in England, and as a gift, my agent gave me, because he was friendly with several of them, and I later got to know George Harrison pretty well, because he produced the first movie I directed, Five Corners, and George's company, Handmade Films, was the producer. But this picture was a gift. That picture was a gift from my agent, and who gave it to me in all good faith that it was signed by all four, and it is signed by all four, but it is a mechanical. I forget what they call it when a machine signs your autograph.
Oh.
When you get a signature from the president, no matter which president, it's very unlikely that person signed it.
Right, right.
It's an auto. I think it's called an auto sign. It's like it's next step up from a rubber stamp. It's hard to it's very difficult to discern because it's signed with a pen.
Yeah.
It's signed in their handwriting with a pen. So, but anyway, I kept it anyway.
Well, thank you. It's so good to chat as per usual. And thanks for spending the time with us this afternoon. Got any fun plans for the rest of the night?
I don't think so. Our family just got back from 5 days in Mammoth, and everybody's kind of tired.
Low key.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Tony. It's so good to see you again, and I'm hoping and confident that we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Good luck up there with everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure having this time together, and we can't wait to invite you to the festival and have 5 full days of movies, events. We're going to have a lot of pickup events to do with restaurants and wineries. We're just going to create the kind of weekend that we want to have for the festival, really buzzy, hyper-local, and all centered around good movies and good conversation. So thanks again for joining us today. Stay safe out there. Keep your mask on, stay safe, stay sane, and stay connected. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.